Neil. Breaking this hour indeed. President Donald Trump will be holding a joint news conference with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau any minute now. We see the two empty podiums just ready to go. We'll bring you that as soon as it begins in just a few minutes here. I am Ashley Webster in today for Trish Regan. Welcome everyone to the Intelligence Report. President Trump and Prime Minister Trudeau meeting for the very first time face-to-face today. The leaders discussing everything from strengthening U.S.-Canada ties to the advancement of women in business. And as we await the president, let's go to our very own Blake Berman, who's at the White House for the very latest on what we can expect at today's news conference. Blake, you never know with President Trump what's going to happen, but I would expect to hear more about the special relationship between the two countries.
And these two, Ashley, have already put out a joint statement on this day a little while ago talking about the relationship between the United States and Canada, but a lot of intrigue going into this press conference here in a couple minutes, we believe, between these two leaders, President Trump and the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Of course, NAFTA is an issue that we are waiting to see if these two touch on in that joint statement. The words North American Free Trade Agreement were not mentioned, though both sides said they do look to free and fair trade. As you know, President Trump has talked about renegotiating NAFTA or ripping it up completely. Prime Minister Trudeau has been a proponent of what he sees as open and free trade. And then, of course, there's the issue of the border and border security. President Trump has talked about making the borders more secure, much more safer, whereas his counterpart in Canada has talked about opening up the borders toward refugees. And then, of course, there is the intrigue surrounding this, the storyline with General Michael Flynn, the head of the NSC. Keep in mind this is, or the head of the NSA, the National Security Advisor. Keep in mind this is a press conference. We believe a couple questions on both sides from both Canadian and American media, and we will see if the confidence that the president has in his National Security Advisor is there at this point, based on several storylines that have come out on this day. Ashley?
All right. Thank you very much. As we continue to, as you can see, wait for the president and the Canadian Prime Minister to come out, I want to bring in our political panel. Joining us, former CIA officer and syndicated radio host Buck Sexton, Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, great to see Leslie, and American Majority CEO Ned Ryan. Thank you all for being here. Buck, let me begin with you. Are we expecting any fireworks today? This is Canada, for crying out loud.
I was going to say, the personalities here are driving the story much more than the policy. If there is such a thing as being on autopilot when it comes to the relationship between two countries, the U.S. and Canada are at the top of the list. Now, we are talking about Trump, and there's no such thing as predictability, really, when it comes to how he's going to react in any policy situation. But on the issues of trade, obviously, they're our second biggest trading partner after China. Even Trump hasn't had anything bellicose, angry, or belligerent to say in any respect about Canada. He's talked about Mexico. He's talked about China. I think you're just going to see the beginning of a personal relationship forming between these two, which is important for policy reasons. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of surprises. But then again, I could be wrong. We'll see what comes up.
You never know with Donald Trump. Ned, let me bring you in. Justin Trudeau, 45 years old, good-looking liberal. And then you have Donald Trump, 70, and, you know, conservative. Politically, they are on the opposite ends of the spectrum, but could there be some sort of relationship here?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I do think there's obviously, as Buck was saying, that tradition between Canada and USA and trade relations. Again, I mean, the trade relations have been very much, Canada needs us a lot more than we need them. So, you know, Trudeau's going to have to be very careful in how he approaches this. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of disagreement, again, on the Syrian refugee thing issue, where Trudeau said they're going to accept up to 40,000 Syrian refugees, and of course, Trump is fighting that on the immigration ban. So there's obviously going to be a few differences. I think they're obviously going to find common ground, but you are going to see this this bleeding heart liberal, as I like to call Trudeau, and the clear-eyed realpolitik of Donald Trump. And, you know, right now, America, we're in a much better negotiating position. And quite frankly, I hope that Trump says, great, take all 40,000 Syrian refugees, which I think is kind of interesting, that in the same week that Assad says there are terrorists embedded in these refugees, that Trudeau says, I'll take 40,000. Great, take them all.
Leslie Marshall, let's get to you. And in fact, Trudeau tweeted on the day that President Trump signed that executive order on immigration. He said, to those fleeing persecution, terror and war, Canadians will welcome you regardless of your faith. Diversity is our strength. Welcome to Canada is the hashtag. Obviously a difference of opinion there, certainly on the policy side of the immigration and refugee question, Leslie. Does that come out today or do they avoid it?
I think they're going to avoid it. I mean, there's a reason that we have seen the president speak very harshly regarding Mexico. And if you notice, he wants to keep our borders safe and build a wall, but not with Canada. If you look at the facts, and the facts are Donald Trump's a great businessman, and it is great business when the United States cannot have a deficit, but rather a trade surplus, as we saw in 2015, over $6 billion. And in 2016, they're expecting that number to increase. If this ends up in a very bad relationship, and they are our second largest trading partner worldwide, we're looking at over 3 million jobs in the United States that could be affected between what Canada purchases and the investments that they make in the United States. So the bottom line here is it benefits both sides, although Canada right now needs us more than we need them. We certainly need a country where we who we have a surplus as opposed to a deficit.
But it's fair, don't you think, Leslie, just to follow up quickly, you know, when you're talking about border security, you do think of Mexico and you don't think of Canada.
Well, this is where that racist term comes up again, you know.
Oh, that's racist?
I think because no. I mean, when you have hot, white, Eastern European supermodels coming in through Canada, people don't think of them as a threat. Come on, Ashley. I mean, the reality is that a lot of the people that come through Canada are largely white. They're coming from Ireland, or they're coming from England, or from Germany, or from Eastern European countries.
Are they coming legal?
There are many people. There are many people that come over the Canadian border illegally, just as our southern border with Mexico. And I think people just focus on our southern border with Mexico. Here in Los Angeles, we have people coming in through the ports from Asian countries illegally. But we just concentrate on that southern Mexico-U.S. border. We have 4 borders.
Yeah, well, that's true. Buck, respond.
Security at the northern border is important to us as well, and has become much stronger in a post-9/11 era, because the recognition that if the terrorists thought they could just get a flight to Canada and come across the border with complete ease, well, then why go through the trouble of trying to get a visa or try to get entry into the United States? So that is a real consideration. It's nothing compared to the illegal immigration issue, of course, and everything else that cartels at the southern border. But the northern border has gotten a lot more attention in the last 15 years or so. But on the issue of immigration, I do think there's an interesting point that could be made by Trump or people on Trump's team, and that is that Canada has a very orderly immigration system. Canada has a system based upon points. They look at individuals, their backgrounds, their skills, and they essentially rank them, and they make determinations about who can come into the country that way. Now, they take in a fair number of refugees. They're taking in some more refugees, but they don't have the illegal immigration problem that we have. And they look at human beings and say, well, this is what you think, this is what we think you'll be as an asset to this country, yay or nay. They make the determination based on that, whereas in this country, it's primarily on family ties, chain migration. So Trump, I don't think, is going to want to get lectured by the Canadians who don't have the illegal immigration problem and add up points based on how people might contribute to the country. I think it's a very different system, a good system, actually.
It is. Ned, I want to touch on that a little bit, because as Buck says, the point system, the Australians use it as well. Could something like that work here?
It could. I mean, I think our immigration system is unfair, it's unjust, it's unethical on both sides. Not only the whole length and process of it, but the fact that we've been allowing so many illegals in. So I think one of the things that hopefully Trump's going to take a look at, first of all, we have to secure our southern borders. That's step one. We've got to deal with the violent illegals, get them out. We've got to deal with those that have been here for a period of time that are they call it the undocumented illegals. We've got to deal with that as well. But we also have to go in and do a reform of our immigration process. Right now, I don't think it should take 7 years to become an American citizen. I think it could be cut down to 3. But I think the biggest thing in our whole immigration process is reminding people, you're coming to America to become part of America, to become part of the dream, to become part of our culture. And so I think there are many things that can be done to reform our immigration system, from shortening it, but also really getting people to come be a part of our society and not balkanized, not having the Mexican American and putting in the hyphenated parts of that, but saying we're going to come here to be Americans, and that's going to be the emphasis now.
And that's been difficult, Leslie, hasn't it? Because, as we see people being rounded up now, as the law is actually being enforced, there's a cry from those who are undocumented, illegal, whatever what term you want to use. But they're saying, wait a minute, this isn't right. But my contention is, and others too, is that if you're here illegally, what rights do you have when it comes to dealing with the U.S. authorities and saying, look, I have a right to be here? There are many who would argue, no, you don't.
Wow, this is a huge discussion. I live in Southern California. Here in California, we have the largest number of undocumented workers. We had ICE officials following children off of school buses here. They also did it outside of Austin, Texas. Those children are not criminals because those children don't have a choice. I have an 8- and 9-year-old. I tell them what to do. They listen. I am the adult. They are a child. I was talking to somebody on my talk radio show who came here at 4. She didn't know until she was in college, technically, that she was an undocumented individual, that her parents had made this choice for her. I think we all agree, regardless of our ideology, if there's a criminal element, they need to be deported, not just to Mexico, to whatever country they came from.
Right.
But when we have people that have been here longer than some of us have been here, some of these individuals have been here 4 or 5 generations, those individuals who have been working hard, who have not broken the law, nor had their family for generations, they pay taxes, and they are definitely an asset and a contributor to this economy, and are part of our fabric, our international fabric in this country. We need to find a pathway to citizenship for those individuals.
Go ahead, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I think this is one of the things where Republicans have to be very careful in dealing with those people that have been here for 15 or 20 years, who did come illegally, who were not on the right side of the law, but quite frankly have been contributing citizens to our society. I think that there are very smart ways. I think there are very thoughtful ways where we can get these people on the right side of the law and at the same time put them on a path to citizenship. And I think that's that third issue. You know, border security, dealing with the violent illegals, I don't think there's real debate on that. Dealing with the undocumented, I think, is going to be something where Republicans, they're going to have to be careful, but I think there are some very smart, sophisticated ways, maybe a little bit of a fine program along the way to give them some legal status until they become citizens. But Republicans have to be very careful on this issue, or it could be devastating to the party in the future.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say that the way that Donald Trump so far is approaching the issue, I think, is the right one, which is to do this step by step. He talks about security at the southern border, building a wall.
Illegal criminals.
Right, because we always have the discussion focused on the people that are the most sympathetic in this whole process.
Yes.
Children and those who've been here a long time, working hard, and have not been a problem for the law, other than the initial act of coming here illegally. But there are many steps before we would have to ever get to dealing with those individuals based on a prioritization of deportations, right? So when you look at what's been done so far, it's going to be criminals first, going to shut off the southern border. Then they need to deal with the magnet. They need to deal with employers that are employing large numbers of illegal immigrants, for them to stop doing that. Because eventually, if people feel like the border is secure and there is interior enforcement, we are dealing with visa overstays. I think the last year we have complete numbers for this. There were about 500,000 visa overstays in this country. So people are staying. And if you overstay your visa, chances are you're staying for quite a while. You're not just doing it because you forgot to book a plane ticket home because you're on vacation. So once all those things are in place, so then you can have a talk about, well, maybe we should bring people into the system who have been here a long time. Right. And there'll also be a trust with much of the American people, I think, at that point, that the enforcement measures, paying back taxes, all the things that people talk about now that we know wouldn't be enforced, it wouldn't happen if this just was done tomorrow, that I think has to be in place first.
Go ahead, Ned.
And I think it's got to be both for the employees and the employers, that you can get them right with the law both at the state and federal level, and say there is going to be a bit of a fine system. If you want to employ undocumented, you're going to pay a bit of a fine. Undocumented are also going to pay a bit of a fine because, quite frankly, you know, these undocumented workers not having legal status, they need to get some sort of legal status on their path to citizenship. At the same time, there has to be a rule of law. They have to get right with the law. And I think this could actually be a sophisticated way for Republicans to say, we're going to get them on the path to citizenship. At the same time, it's going to increase state and federal revenue at the same time, as we're getting these people right with the law.
That's great, but Leslie, then aren't you encouraging people to come here illegally? Why go through the system? Why fill out all the forms, go through the interviews and all the rest of it that goes into it?
Only dealing with people that have already been here as undocumented. It's not letting new people in. No. Dealing with people that are already here as undocumented and saying, we're going to secure that border. You're not going to be doing this anymore. But we have to be realistic about the 11, 12 million that are already here. We can't just simply deport all of them en masse.
Yeah, but going forward, Leslie, surely we have to give a message that you can't continue to open the door and say, come on in, live in the shadows until eventually we can get you into the system.
Yeah, but this is multifaceted, okay? First of all, people aren't going to come here. If you're a rabbit, you're not coming unless the carrot is dangled. The corporations that hired these individuals to begin with have never been punished and, quite frankly, need to be punished because when the economy went south in this country, we saw immigration, not only from Mexico, but on all 4 of our borders, decrease. I'm with Rick Perry. You build a 12-foot wall, they get a 14-foot ladder, and we know that the drug cartel already have miles and miles of tunnels tunnels underneath. And honestly, I don't think we can afford both the wall and to man it with increased border security. And that's not going to help us with regard to terrorism if we just look at history. There are two issues here. One, we stop dangling the carrot of financial opportunity through jobs by penalizing corporations who hire individuals that are not American citizens or green card holders, too. We do have to look at those overstaying their welcome on student and work visas, because a lot of people think, oh, it's all of these Mexicans coming, from the southern border. Look at the numbers of those who outstayed their visas once they expire from work and student visas that were issued. And then, with regard to terrorism, we just need to look at, with the exception of 9/11, where they did not come through Mexico, by the way, wall or no wall. When we look at terrorism, we have a problem in this country with individuals being angry, feeling disenfranchised, and if you don't want the titles Mexican-American, Muslim-American, then we need to unite.
I think you rounded up perfectly. Let's now go to the White House. President Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Let's listen in.
Thank you. Prime Minister Trudeau, on behalf of all Americans, I thank you for being with us today. It is my honor to host such a great friend, neighbor, and ally at the White House, a very special place. This year, Canada celebrates the 150th year of Confederation. For Americans, this is one of the many milestones in our friendship, and we look forward, very much forward, I must say, to many more to come. Our two nations share much more than a border. We share the same values, we share the love, and a truly great love of freedom, and we share a collective defense. American and Canadian troops have gone to battle together, fought wars together, and forged the special bonds that come when two nations have shed their blood together, which we have. In these dangerous times, it is more important than ever that we continue to strengthen our vital alliance. The United States is deeply grateful for Canada's contribution to the counter-ISIS effort. Thank you. And we continue to work in common and in common cause against terrorism and work in common cooperation toward reciprocal trade and shared growth. We understand that both of our countries are stronger when we join forces in matters of international commerce. Having more jobs and trade right here in North America is better for both the United States and is also much better for Canada. We should coordinate closely, and we will coordinate closely to protect jobs in our hemisphere and keep wealth on our continent and to keep everyone safe. Prime Minister, I pledge to work with you in pursuit of our many shared interests. This includes a stronger trading relationship between the United States and Canada. It includes safe, efficient, and responsible cross-border travel and migration. And it includes close partnership on domestic and international security. America is deeply fortunate to have a neighbor like Canada. We have before us the opportunity to build even more bridges, and bridges of cooperation, and bridges of commerce. Both of us are committed to bringing greater prosperity and opportunity to our people. We just had a very productive meeting with women business leaders from the United States and Canada, where we discussed how to secure everything that we know the full power of women can do better than anybody else. We know that. I just want to say, Mr. Prime Minister, that I'm focused and you're focused on the important role women play in our economies. We must work to address the barriers faced by women and women entrepreneurs, including access to capital, access to markets, and, very importantly, access to networks. In our discussion today, we will focus on improving the ways our government and our governments together can benefit citizens of both the United States and Canada, and in so doing, advance the greater peace and stability of the world. Mr. Prime Minister, I look forward to working closely with you to build upon our very historic friendship. There are incredible possibilities for us to pursue Canada and the United States together. Again, thank you for joining us, and I know our discussions will be very, very productive for the future of both countries. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd first like to start by extending my sincere thanks to President Trump for inviting me down to Washington. Any day I get to visit our southern neighbors is a good day in my books, particularly when it's so nice and warm compared to what it is back home. We are suffering under a significant winter storm that's hitting our Atlantic provinces particularly harsh, so I just want to send everyone back at home my thoughts as they shovel out and impress on everyone to stay safe. Le président et moi avons eu une première rencontre très productive.
Myself have had a very productive first meeting today. We had the opportunity to get to know one another better, and more importantly, we had the opportunity to talk about the unique relationship between Canada and the United States.
Citizens on both sides of the 49th parallel have understood that the bond between our nations is a special one. No other neighbors in the entire world are as fundamentally linked as we are. We've fought in conflict zones together, negotiated environmental treaties together, including 1991's historic air quality agreement, and we've entered into groundbreaking economic partnerships that have created good jobs for both of our peoples. Canadians and Americans alike share a common history, as well as people-to-people ties that make us completely and totally integrated. Our workers are connected by trade, transportation, and cross-border commerce. Our communities rely on each other for security, stability, and economic prosperity. Our families have long lived together and worked together. We know that more often than not, our victories are shared. And just as we celebrate together, so too do we suffer loss and heartbreak together. Through it all, the foundational pillar on which our relationship is built is one of mutual respect. And that's a good thing, because as we know, relationships between neighbors are pretty complex, and we won't always agree on everything. But because of our deep, abiding respect for one another, we're able to successfully navigate those complexities and still remain the closest of allies and friends. Make no mistake, at the end of the day, Canada and the U.S. will always remain each other's most essential partner. And today's conversations have served to reinforce how important that is for both Canadians and Americans. As we know, 35 U.S. states list Canada as their largest export market, and our economies benefit from the over $2 billion in two-way trade that takes place every single day. Millions of good middle-class jobs on both sides of the border depend on this crucial partnership. Maintaining strong economic ties is vital to our mutual success, and we're going to continue to work closely together over the coming years so that Canadian and American families can get ahead. Comme nous le savons, le Canada représente le plus grand.
As we know, 35 U.S. states list Canada as their largest export market, and our economies benefit from the over $2 billion in two-way trade that takes place every single day. Millions of good middle-class jobs on both sides of the border depend on this crucial partnership. Maintaining strong economic ties is vital to our mutual success, and we're going to continue to work closely together over the coming years so that Canadian and American families can get ahead.
I'd like to highlight just a few of the specifics that President Trump and I discussed today. At the end of the day, the President and I share a common goal. We both want to make sure that hard-working folks can go to work at a good job, put food on the table for their families, and save up to take a vacation every once in a while. That's what we're trying to do here. Today, we reiterated that our nations are committed to collaborating on energy infrastructure projects that will create jobs while respecting the environment. And as we know, investing in infrastructure is a great way to create the kind of economic growth that our countries so desperately need. In that same vein, we know that ensuring equal opportunities for women in the workforce is essential for growing the economy and maintaining American and Canadian competitiveness on the world stage. As such, the President and I have agreed to the creation of the Canada-United States Council for Advancement of Women Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders. This initiative is more than just about dollars and cents. This is about ensuring that women have access to the same opportunities as men and prioritizing the support and empowerment of women who are senior business leaders and entrepreneurs. In doing so, we'll grow the Canadian and American economies and help our businesses prosper. Et finalement, le président Trump et moi.
Finally, President Trump and myself have agreed to work together to fight against the traffic of opioids across our border. The rise of illegal use of opioids in our society is nothing less than a tragedy. We will do everything we can to ensure the safety of Canadians and Americans. Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump, I know that if our countries continue to work together, our people will greatly benefit from this cooperation.
Demonstrated time and again that in order to tackle our most pressing issues, both foreign and domestic, we must work with our closest allies, learn from each other, and stand in solidarity as a united voice. With a level of economic and social integration that is unmatched on the world stage, Canada and the United States will forever be a model example of how to be good neighbors. Winston Churchill once said, "That long Canadian frontier from the Atlantic to the Pacific Oceans, guarded only by neighborly respect and honorable obligations, is an example to every country and a pattern for the future of the world." That, my friends, is the very essence of the Canada-US relationship. I look forward to working with President Trump over the coming years to nurture and build upon this historic partnership. Once again, it's a tremendous pleasure to be here in Washington. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a couple of questions. Scott Thurman. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
You just spoke about the desire to build bridges, although there are some notable and philosophical differences between yourself and Prime Minister Trudeau. I'm curious, as you move forward on issues from trade to terrorism, how do you see this relationship playing out, and are there any specific areas with which, during your conversations today, you each decided to perhaps alter or amend your stances already on those sensitive issues like terrorism and immigration? And Prime Minister Trudeau, while only in its infancy so far, how do you see this relationship compared to that under the Obama administration?
Well, we just began discussions. We are going to have a great relationship with Canada, maybe as good or better, hopefully, than ever before. We have some wonderful ideas on immigration. We have some, I think, very strong, very tough ideas on the tremendous problem that we have with terrorism. And I think when we put them all together, which will be very, very quickly, we have a group of very talented people, we will see some very, very obvious results. We're also doing some cross-border things that will make it a lot easier for trade and a lot better and a lot faster for trade. We have, through technology, we have some really great ideas, and they'll be implemented fairly quickly.
One of the things we spoke about was the fact that security and immigration need to work very well together, and certainly Canada has emphasized security as we look towards improving our immigration system and remaining true to the values that we have. And we had a very strong and fruitful discussion on exactly that. There's plenty that we can draw on each other from in terms of how we move forward with a very similar goal, which is to create free, open societies that keep our citizens safe. And that's certainly something that we're very much in agreement on. Tonna McCharles.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, and Mr. Prime Minister, could you answer in English and French for us, please? A little bit of a follow-on on my American colleague's question. President Trump, you seem to suggest that Syrian refugees are a Trojan horse for potential terrorism, while the Prime Minister hugs refugees and welcomes them with open arms. So I'd like to know, are you confident the northern border is secure?
Can never be totally confident, but through the incredible efforts already, I see it happening, of formerly General Kelly, now Secretary Kelly. We have really done a great job. We're actually taking people that are criminals, very, very hardened criminals in some cases, with a tremendous track record of abuse and problems, and we're getting them out. And that's what I said I would do. I'm just doing what I said I would do when we won by a very, very large electoral college vote. And I knew that was going to happen. I knew this is what people were wanting. And that wasn't the only reason. That wasn't my only thing that we did so well on, but that was something that was very important. And I said, we will get the criminals out, the drug lords, the gang members. We're getting them out. General Kelly, who's sitting right here, is doing a fantastic job. And I said at the beginning, we are going to get the bad ones, the really bad ones. We're getting them out, and that's exactly what we're doing. I think that in the end, everyone's going to be extremely happy, and I will tell you right now, a lot of people are very, very happy right now.
Canada has always understood that keeping Canadians safe is one of the fundamental responsibilities of any government, and that's certainly something that we're very much focused on. At the same time, we continue to pursue our policies of openness towards immigration and refugees without compromising security. And part of the reason we've been successful in doing that over the past year, welcoming close to 40,000 Syrian refugees, is because we have been coordinating with our allies, the United States and around the world, to demonstrate that security comes very, very seriously to us, and that's something that we continue to deal with. C'est clair que
it is clear that if you want to have a healthy and secure society, or safe society, you have to make sure that you maintain, that you focus on security. And we have welcomed refugees from Syria. We have been very successful, but we have always taken our responsibility towards security very seriously. And our allies, including the United States, understand this focus very well, and they have done so since the very beginning.
Please.
Thank you. President Trump, now that you've been in office and received intelligence briefings for nearly 1 month, what do you see as the most important national security matters facing us? And Prime Minister Trudeau, you've made very clear that Canada has an open-door policy for Syrian refugees. Do you believe that President Trump's moratorium on immigration has merit on national security grounds?
Okay, thank you. Many, many problems. When I was campaigning, I said, it's not a good situation. Now that I see it, including with our intelligence briefings, we have problems that a lot of people have no idea how bad they are, how serious they are, not only internationally, but when you come right here. I mean, obviously, North Korea is a big problem, and we will deal with that very strongly. We have problems all over the Middle East. We have problems just about every corner of the globe, no matter where you look. I had a great meeting this weekend with Prime Minister Abe of Japan, and got to know each other very, very well. Extended weekend, really. We were with each other for long periods of time, and our staffs and representatives. But on the home front, we have to create borders. We have to let people that can love our country in, and I want to do that. We want to have a big, beautiful, open door, and we want people to come in and come in our country. But we cannot let the wrong people in, and I will not allow that to happen during this administration. And people, the citizens of our country, want that, and that's their attitude too, I will tell you. We are getting such praise for our stance, and it's a stance of common sense. Maybe a certain toughness, but it's really more than toughness. It's a stance of common sense, and we are going to pursue it vigorously. And we don't want to have our country have the kinds of problems that you're witnessing taking place, not only here, but all over the world. We won't stand for it. We won't put up with it. We're just not going to let it happen. We're going to give ourselves every bit of chance so that things go well for the United States, and they will go well. Thank you.
Canada and the United States have been neighbors a long time, and Canadians and Americans have stood together, worked together at home and around the world. We fought and died together in battlefields in World War I and World War II, in Korea, in Afghanistan. But there have been times where we have differed in our approaches, and that's always been done firmly and respectfully. The last thing Canadians expect is for me to come down and lecture another country on how they choose to govern themselves. My role and our responsibility is to continue to govern in such a way that reflects Canadians' approach and be a positive example in the world.
Okay.
Richard Latendresse.
Richard Latendresse. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
Well, ask my question in French first, and then for you, I'll get again in English. Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Mr. Prime Minister, I heard you correctly. You said that Canadian businesses, Canadian workers are concerned for their businesses and for their work and jobs concerning the renegotiation of NAFTA. So what guarantees did you get from this government that we will keep our jobs and our businesses in the renegotiation of NAFTA? Mr. President.
Again, during the last 3 months, you have denounced NAFTA. You have talked over and over about the Mexican portion of the agreement, very little about the Canadian one. My questions in two short part is Canada a fair trader? And when you talk about changes to NAFTA concerning Canada, are you talking about big changes or small changes? Thank you.
D'abord, Richard, merci.
First of all, Richard, thank you for your question. It is a real concern for many Canadians because we know that our economy is very dependent on our bonds, our relationship with the United States. Goods and services do cross the border each way every single day, and this means a lot of millions of jobs for Canadians and good jobs for Canadians. So we are always focusing on these jobs, but there are also good jobs, millions of jobs in the United States that depend on those relationships between our two countries. So when we sit down, as we did today, and as our teams will be doing in the weeks and months to come, we will be talking about how we can continue to create good jobs for our citizens on both sides of the border. And during this exercise, we continue to understand that we have to allow this free flow of goods and services And we have to be aware of the integration of our economies, which is extremely positive for both our countries. And this is the focus that we will have in the coming weeks and months to come.
Aware of the fact that much of our economy depends on good working relationships with the United States, good integration with the American economy. And the fact is, millions of good jobs on both sides of the border depend on the smooth and easy flow of goods and services and people back and forth across our border. Both President Trump and I got elected on commitments to support the middle class, to work hard for people who need a real shot at success. And we know that by working together, by ensuring the continued effective integration of our two economies, we are going to be creating greater opportunities for middle-class Canadians and Americans now and well into the future.
I agree with that 100%. We have a very outstanding trade relationship with Canada. We'll be tweaking it. We'll be doing certain things that are going to benefit both of our countries. It's a much less severe situation than what's taken place on the southern border. On the southern border, for many, many years, the transaction was not fair to the United States. It was an extremely unfair transaction. We're going to work with Mexico. We're going to make it a fair deal for both parties. I think that we're going to get along very well with Mexico. They understand and we understand. You probably have noticed that Ford is making billions of dollars of new investments in this country. You saw Intel the other day announce that because of what I've been doing and what I'm doing in terms of regulation, lowering taxes, et cetera, they're coming in with billions and billions of dollars of investment and thousands of jobs. General Motors, likewise, is expanding plants and going to build new plants. Fiat Chrysler was at a meeting where they're doing the same. Jack Ma. We have so many people that want to come into the United States. It's actually very exciting. I think it's going to be a very exciting period of time for the United States and for the workers of the United States, because they have been truly the forgotten man and forgotten women. It's not going to be forgotten anymore, believe me. So our relationship with Canada is outstanding, and we're going to work together to make it even better. And as far as the southern border is concerned, we're going to get that worked out. We're going to make it fair, but we are going to make it so that everybody is happy. It's very important to me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
All right, so there you go. Talking for about, by my measure, maybe 25 minutes or so, opening statements from both leaders and then questions. Much of it dealing with immigration, refugees, the security of both countries. Of course, there was talk about the economics and the economic ties between the United States and Canada, of which, of course, the two countries are tied very closely. So a lot of agreement there, but some subtle differences, no doubt, when it comes to the immigration issue. Buck, what was your take on all of that?
I think this is another win on the diplomatic side of things for Donald Trump after the very positive meeting with Prime Minister Abe, universally understood to be a good interaction between the two. This was really a clinic in how to put on a press conference for two premiers of two different countries. Now, look, Canada-U.S., it's as close a relationship as you're going to get, so I'm not going to pretend that this is some sort of diplomatic acrobatics, but there were some moments there where the press tried to get a little daylight or try to probe and maybe create, and Trudeau could have played a little bit to his leftist inclinations and base, but he really didn't. He actually kept it very much on message, and it was just a reaffirmation of what is an incredibly important and longstanding friendship between two countries.
That's very well put. And to that point, Donald Trump saying, look, I see the intelligence briefings. They show problems that you, the public, have no idea about. He says there are problems out there in every corner of the world. But he went on to say, look, I want to let people in that big, beautiful door, he says, but I can't let the bad people in. It's common sense. And we will pursue this policy vigorously. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, said, look, we differ in approaches, he said, but no one in Canada expects me to come down and lecture another country. We just want to be a positive example in the world. Interesting choice of words, very soft selling it. There are differences, no doubt. Leslie Marshall, to Buck's point, you know, was this a diplomatic win for Donald Trump?
Well, I would say that perhaps Prime Minister Trudeau up to the bar of class, diplomacy, and the way a leader behaves. And I say that because I think we actually saw the president, for one of the very rare times, honestly, in my opinion, acting presidential. He had somebody write his words. He stuck to it. He didn't go off script. And he was in the role that he needed to be at that press conference. I do think, however, Canadians might be a bit disappointed because I think there were some people that were looking for that Hugh Grant in Love Actually moment. I think we saw that certainly with Theresa May from the UK that Brits were hoping for, and we definitely, I think, are going to see this on Twitter in just a few minutes from Canadians wanting the Prime Minister to be stronger. But to his credit, I don't think it's anyone's in this or another country's responsibility to say how another country should or shouldn't operate. But I think it's important that he express the Canadian values. To your point, Ashley, regarding immigration, the president, I was disappointed, didn't specifically answer the question that reporter asked, which was
because he was sticking to his notes,
with the northern
to
border, with the security with specifically the northern border. And the other thing is when he says he wants people, to come here and trying to act welcoming. Yeah, I just can't forget that little boy with the blood and mud all over him from Syria that would love to come here. But those children and those orphans, those children and those orphans, those children, those orphans, those refugees from Syria, they are not a criminal element.
Ned, go ahead and answer that, please, Ned.
Donald Trump's responsibility is to the American people who elected him. They have agreed that his approach on this immigration ban and refugee ban is common sense. You saw polls last week. 55% approve, 38% disapprove. This is a winning political issue for Donald Trump, and again, it's a triumph of common sense. That's what the American people want to see. He is the advocate of the American people. He is not called upon to be the advocate for Syrian refugees. His priority is the American people, and he knows that. And this is the other thing in dealing with these trade issues. I think the most important thing to understand about Donald Trump in dealing with trade issues, he has made the calculation that he wants more Americans with a paycheck, and they might have to pay a little bit more for goods, than fewer Americans with a paycheck with cheaper goods. And that's the whole matrix for his decision-making. Right. And guess what he's going to do, Ashley? With that approach, he's going to gut the Democrat Party and remove the working-class base from them and create a new coalition that will be a winning one.
She doesn't like that.
Yeah, let's stay right. I want to bring someone else into the conversation, Senior Fellow and Director of the Manhattan Institute, Diana Furchtgott-Rath. Diana, thank you for joining us. You listened to all of this. How do you think President Trump did?
I think they both did great. I think we should remember that they're on very different sides of the political spectrum. Justin Trudeau is very much to the left. Donald Trump in many ways is to the right. And I think they had a unified message, and that was terrific. It was also great to hear President Trump talking about the advantages of free trade, how much free trade, how much trade he wants to have with Canada, and also how he wants to let in people who want to come to work. I think that was all very, very positive, a very positive economic message, as well as a positive diplomatic one.
And Diana, follow-up to you. Leslie Marshall on the panel here said, look, she has a feeling that there are going to be Canadians out there disappointed in Justin Trudeau, who did not state perhaps more strongly his country's belief that you should welcome in these thousands of Syrian refugees, obviously very different to Donald Trump's approach, and yet he didn't make that point very strongly, or not strongly enough, she believes, to Canada.
Well, I think that shows that Prime Minister Trudeau is a real diplomat. And yes, many Canadians want to distance themselves from the United States. It's part of their identity to be different from the United States. Many do not like our president. They don't like President Trump. So I think it's even better that Prime Minister Trudeau stayed on message. He behaved in a diplomatic manner. He did not play to his base and try to diss the president, for example.
But he can't pick a fight. 75% of Canadian exports come to the U.S. 98% of their oil comes to the U.S. He can't pick a fight with Trump.
That's true, Buck. I mean, listen, there are those people out there. The world media does not like Donald Trump. It's easy to beat up on him. But there are those that say world leaders who cozy up to him. Theresa May, for example, was widely criticized, feeling too close to this unpredictable, leader of America. seems to me that Trudeau did a nice job of kind of walking the line.
Well, we're still the global hegemon. We're still the premier superpower. And if for Justin Trudeau to come in, and as he said, and I give him total credit, if all you knew about Justin Trudeau was what you saw in that press conference today, I think people across the political spectrum of this country would say, well, that's a guy who seems pretty on message, very smooth, obviously very articulate, 2 languages, but we know that he has some very left-wing political beliefs. But for him to come and in his first meeting pick a fight, I know the press wanted that to happen, but to pick a fight with the Trump administration on any issue would just be unwise. At least allow some of the Trump policies to play out a bit before you become yet another person who's judging this administration, before you can even see what the results of the policies are. So I think it was a smart move even for Trudeau.
All right, let's take a deep breath. Buck, Leslie, Ned, Diana, we'll be right back. Thank you very much. Don't go away. President Donald Trump saying just moments ago that the White House has some, quote, wonderful ideas to combat terrorism. The president's comments coming a day after advisor Stephen Miller said that new executive orders on immigration are on the table. Take a listen.
We are contemplating new and additional actions to ensure that our immigration system does not become a vehicle for admitting people into our country who are hostile to this nation and its values.
It's like a public service announcement. It's kind of the start. Anyway, so what would a new immigration order entail? What would it look like? Joining me now is Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. Hans, thank you so much for being here. How much of the original order do they have to change? Was it all rubbish and they start again, or are there just elements that need to be taken out?
I think there are just certain elements that need to be revised. Let me make it clear. I think the Ninth Circuit got the law wrong. But, for example, the White House quickly said after the executive order was issued that it would not apply to permanent resident aliens. The Ninth Circuit refused to accept that assurance from the White House. And so if they issue a new order, they'll just have to make it clear what they've already said is correct, that it's not going to apply to permanent resident aliens.
But if the Ninth Circuit got it wrong, how do we know that whatever order they put forward is going to be, properly adjudicated? Are they always going to get it wrong?
Well, I think they could get it wrong again. You know, there's a reason why they're the most overturned court in the country. But I think they're going to have a tougher time justifying it if they once again find against the president and this order, if he has actually revised it to take care of things that they talked about as problems, such as it applying to resident aliens.
So in your mind, they don't have to change a whole lot, because the presumption was this was targeting Muslims in particular, these 7 Muslim-majority countries, and that was the issue, or the crux of the problem. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was some mention of was there a religious discrimination in this, but even that claim is totally bogus. We know it's bogus because there are almost 50 countries in the world that are majority Muslim. This only applies to 7 countries, which were even recognized by the Obama administration as terrorist havens. So it has nothing to do with religion. And look, this whole thing has been so overblown. Put this in perspective. Last year, the United States had 80 million foreign visitors. Most of them had to get visas. The number of visitors from these 7 basically failed or failing countries was a tiny, tiny percentage of the vast majority of individuals who visited the United States and will be completely unaffected by this order.
Got about 30 seconds, Hans. Where does this all end up? Does it end up in the Supreme Court? Because I don't think the Trump administration wants that. How does it get resolved?
Well, I think if they revise the order along the lines we've been talking about, it will actually moot the case in Washington and make it, like I said, much tougher for the courts to say that there's a problem with the order. It may eventually go to the Supreme Court, but that may take quite a while.
All right. We may get the new order, by the way, by this evening. We'll have to wait and see. Hans, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, and we'll be right back. Oh, by the way, we have a lovely rally on our hands as well, of course. Let's check these markets for you. The Dow up 148 points, the S&P up 0.5%. Same story on the NASDAQ. The major indexes hitting intraday highs, all-time highs today. We've been off to the races since the opening bell. Financials doing very well. Is this the next leg up in the Trump rally? We'll have to wait and see. But the market, the Dow, up some 2,000 points now since November the 8th. That's when Well, of course, that's when Donald Trump became president, didn't he? What a day, Liz. Liz Clayman, over to you.